Thank you. Write that ticket. Today we're going to talk about write that ticket. Think for a moment, anytime you've done something great, you got accepted to the University of South Carolina, you got connected into the Rhodos learning and living community, and someone said to you, wow, you're going to write your ticket. That has happened to me on a number of occasions, and it's super exciting at first. But then as I get involved, I start thinking about nobody ever writes the damn ticket. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What are you making? Really what we're talking about today is making the life that you want. So this is the kickoff, the conversation about living a life by design, not by demand, not by someone else's demand. So my name is Bea Ray. Thank you so much, Simon. It's a delight to be here. Thank you all for being here. I think I love your introduction, but I think I also heard maybe I'm evil and I have a long list, so I might be old. So, okay, we'll take both of those things, and they're both true. So that's all right. I might put them right out there on the list. Life by design rather than life by demand. Write that ticket. So this is the very first thing I kind of want to give you the picture is just thinking about what does that mean? What does that life look like for you? And a lot of times it starts with thinking differently, not I went to this school, so I have to get that degree and I have to move into this area, so on and so forth. When I was first told to write that ticket because I got into Emory University, I couldn't wait to study all sorts of different things. My favorite class was art history, but it seemed like everyone there said, it's got to be medical school. And when I was accepted to Harvard Business School, people said, oh my God, you went to Harvard Business School, you're going, write that ticket. And sure enough, as soon as I got there, everyone said, well, you got to work for McKinsey or you got to work for Goldman Sachs. And when they went on to work for McKinsey, then they had to be partner. And I thought, where's the creativity? So I just want you to be able to take that in and think, what is the life that you want? So we've already decided that I'm old and evil. I'm also crazy because I chose to raise my children on a bridgeless island. This is me thinking differently. These are my 3 children. Because I still have permission to use their picture and I'm going to use it as much as possible. But we're on our way to choir practice, dance, and soccer because that was our commute method. But basically, life on Daufuskie was us thinking a little differently. And I had all sorts of demands. I had this degree, so of course I'm supposed to live in a major city. I'm supposed to have a higher salary. I have a mother-in-law who says, private school only with a big reputable name. What? A school on an island with 17 children, 3 live in your house? That can't possibly be how you're going to raise my grandchildren. Well, I got to design it. And so this was our life, 6 years, and it was the best thing you can imagine. I'll give you a tiny little glimpse. Is when my daughter was in about the 1st or 2nd grade, the older son, Robert, was 4. And so he came to school in the afternoon. He was afternoon pre-K. And so I had one of those extend-a-bikes that you've probably seen. Someone can, pedal, but they can't quite balance. And I had the baby on the handle. There was like a seat for the handlebar. So like, this is our life, right? Like we ride the bike, we drop off the one kid, we sit down with all 17 of the student body and have lunch. And then we leave him for the afternoon. And myself and the baby would ride the bike back home, literally milk a goat, stop by the tennis court. I mean, this was fabulous. What I think is so interesting is at least 30 people a year approached me and said, if only I could live on Daufuskie, if only I could do that. And I would say, well, you can, and here's what happens, and here's what you do. And, I don't know that you need the Daufuskie house and some corporate job. And whatever it was, is I laid out the how, and then they all said, no, I can't. And so I think that's fine if that's your life by design. But what I kept hearing was, I can't because I have some vision of what I'm supposed to do, what I'm taught to do, what my community is doing. And so sometimes living life in a really awesome way means doing something differently. So because again, I'm going to brag on my children, I'll tell you about this story where just 2 years ago, I took my 3 children and my niece to Australia for 3 months. And we are not wealthy. I won't pass around a bucket for change, but we might. We are not wealthy people. But what I realized as I was signing a lease, we were living in Hilton Head Island in a nice home, and it was time to re-sign the lease for the next year. And I hadn't really given it much thought because perhaps like you, we think, oh, this is what you're supposed to do, and you go through the motions. But all of a sudden, this gentleman I was signing the lease with was a little bit difficult. And I wondered why he wasn't getting back to me and why he wasn't answering my questions. And what I came to think was, how much money do you not want? And I'd never thought about having a house as a choice. I thought that was one of the things you have to do when you have children. You put a roof over their head. So I started to question, what happens if I don't pay rent for this month and next month and the next month? What happens if I don't pay for cable, if I don't pay for electricity? And so, since I was renting, it was easy to unrent, if you will, or not re-sign the lease. And I decided if I didn't pay those bills for 4 months, you can take a family on a really cool vacation. So I asked the children, they said sure. It involved a lot of packing and moving boxes and getting rid of things like Legos that we didn't need anymore. And indeed, the way I say it is my children took me to Australia. And it was a really awesome experience because I can't pack up a whole house, but we put things in storage and we just went. And they found their online school, and I did a little bit of online work. I wanted to go sit in Bondi Beach and relax because I had had a pretty stressful job for the previous 3 years. And my daughter says, oh no, Mom, I've got 32 cliff jumps, waterfalls, hikes, and we traipsed around 6,000 miles of that country. We took a 25-hour train ride and a few flights, and indeed checked off all 32 of her agenda. But that was her living her life by design, and I tagging along. So as we desire difference, I'm going to give you just a few hacks. One of the ways I've been able to travel is I house swap. And everyone says, oh, do you see the movie? You know, is it just like the movie? Well, I've never fallen in love in house swapping, but there's hope, right? But I do like to talk about it because this is just the points where I've highlighted. We never did the drive, are all of the places where we have house swapped, and there's been a few other in Europe. And so at this point, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars in vacation in the 26 house swaps that we've done. And I just share it with you because, again, it's a way of just thinking a little differently. And I'll give you a couple things. One is I have 3 children, as I've told you. And so what I would do before each time is I'd put out 3 big boxes, like these plastic kind of bins. And I would say, if you have anything, a stuffed animal, a book, a project, you don't want someone to touch, just please put it in your bin. We'll stick it up in the attic and don't worry about it for the week because someone else is coming to our home. And I did that every single time. And what was so fascinating is not once did a child ever put anything in the bin. They always said to me, well, Mommy, who's coming? And I'd say, oh, well, it looks like Matthew, he's 5, he's coming, and his older sister Sarah is coming, and she's 12. And William would come out and say, I think Matthew would want to read this book. I think they would be interested in this painting set. Or I think, and they would set out special things for the new friends that were living in their home. And it was and we would go do the same thing in their places. And so it wasn't just saving the money. It wasn't just taking my kids to Vail or to Breckenridge or to Central Park or wherever. It was living in a whole new way. And it was a really, really special thing. So we're going to take questions at the end, but I'm going to go ahead and answer 2 questions that you haven't asked because people always ask me, what was your best scenario and what was your worst scenario in house swapping? So maybe we'll start with the worst. We did show up in Washington, D.C., a little bit outside of town. It was officially within the Beltway, but it was more like a neighborhood, and we didn't do a lot of walking in that neighborhood, just cars. And so we were literally overlooking the home that was the chief of police. So really nice neighborhood, big, beautiful homes. But I arrive, and the place was filthy. It was so dirty that I'm like, back in the car, everybody, we're going to the mall. And it was so filthy that there was like SpaghettiOs on the stove. So exactly, thank you for the sound effects. But you know what's so interesting is I never even mentioned it. to the gentleman. He was on his way to my house, and I simply never mentioned it because here I was with my family of 5. I had my in-laws coming, so there are 7 of us in this 4 or 5 bedroom beautiful home. We're going to be there for 8 or 9 days. This is, I don't know, probably $400, $500 a night it would have been for a hotel. I just picked up the phone, called something like a Mary Maids, paid $250, hired some people to come into the house. I said, clean every single thing, take off all of the sheets, throw away the SpaghettiOs, and we'll be back in 3 or 4 hours. And we had a great time, and I just never thought anything about it. So sometimes there are glitches, and that would be an example, and we just rolled right through that. The best scenario was a time we were going out to Keystone, Colorado. My children were in a wedding, and the bride had said, you must stay in this building. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is so expensive. We're going to fly out there, and then if I have to stay in a certain building, how am I possibly going to get a house swap? Well, lo and behold, we literally found one in the exact building where she needed us to be, in this little village up on the mountain. So that was fabulous. And the woman we were house swapping with, this very senior executive, did general counsel for Quest Communications, and I at the time was licensing software. So we actually did a business deal because I was housing or swapping houses. So that was incredible. But what was really great was we lived, I had already told you, on Daufuskie Island, and so she was coming to my home, and we had a dog. And I know I had told her that, but I kind of said, I just want to remind you, the dog won't be there. We have a sitter. She'll be over here. But if anybody's allergic, this is probably not the house for you. It'll be professionally clean, but I just worry. And she goes, oh, by the time we get to you, we would have been a whole week in New York. We'll be missing our dog so much. Can we keep yours? And so not only did my dog have a great time, stay in the house, but it saved me a few $100s on a dog sitter. And then we became even better friends. The second thing she did was literally the week prior. She calls me up and she says, hey, are you going to be flying into the Denver airport, and are you renting a car? And I said, well, of course, that's how we plan to go. And she goes, would you mind borrowing my car? It's really expensive to park a car in Denver. And I was like, woohoo! So saved an additional $300 on the car. So I am a big fan of thinking differently, not worrying about your silver, although you can pack all those things up, but just this was a little hack that has meant the world to my family. Another hack that's particularly great, perhaps even more so for college students, is Workaway. And there are several sites, but workaway.info. And I've used this to bring people to me. If I've had a house project, I have a friend who I recommended to who's redoing a bathroom. If you have a big home, you can bring someone in to help you get projects done. But it's basically a database where you say, these are my skills. I can help with children. I can help on a farm. I can ride a horse, whatever. And I want to go to your town. And so it was a little challenging for us as we traveled around Australia because we were 5 of us, and most times it's a single or a couple. But you can stay somewhere for 3 days, you can stay somewhere for 3 months, as long as you're willing to pick avocados. There was a sugarcane farm, there was, what do you call it, where it was a big ranch. We saw all sorts of places where what you do is you stay for free, you get fed for free, but you usually work about 4 hours a day. When we stayed in a Workaway in Australia, it was in this gorgeous beach place right between, about halfway between Sydney and Melbourne. Bright blue waterway. We could take the kayaks out as much as we wanted. We had our own little guest cottage. I did do some work taking care of 2 of their children. But my main job, because I'm a business consultant, and this gentleman was launching a business, and he had read my LinkedIn profile, and he said, how about you come? We'll have dinner with myself and my wife every night, and then after dinner for an hour and a half, I can talk to you about my business. And I was like, done. This was great. So that's another little hack on living differently. So this is a cue for me to breathe, and it's a cue for you. But basically, I'm here to talk to you about designing your life, and not a life by design, not a life by demand. And I'm going to walk through 4 sort of hints that are tricks that I want to concentrate on. And yet I also want to be really clear. life will be bad. There are moments will be bad, and this is the black hole. And I don't know what your black hole has been and what it will be. I don't know if it's sexual assault. I don't know if it's financial devastation. I don't know if it's $700,000 of debt. I don't know if it's a wrecked marriage because of a mental illness. I don't know if it's an eating disorder. Those are some of mine. Life is not always easy, and there are things that we need to overcome. And so learning to live a life by design is not to say there are no problems. It is to say there's a chance to make every day really powerful and really worth it, and a chance to be more resilient as you come back. The number one piece of advice about living a life by design is about gratitude. Gratitude is the most empowering, energizing activity you can do, practicing gratitude. I encourage this in a number of ways, and my favorite is to just think about the beauty around you. Think about whether it's the butterfly. Oh my gosh, this campus is stunning. I mean, maybe it's just today, but the leaves, the trees, the hills, it's so powerful just walking around this beautiful place and taking in beauty. This is my daughter, and I just love not only that she's a beautiful dancer, but that she spends so much of her energy thinking about, when is the sun coming up? When am I catching the sunset? Hey, Mom, we have to go to this location because the tide is going to be full, but the winds are going to be slow, so we can get a really great picture. And I want to see the tide pools, or I think they called them fairy pools in Australia, and see them with their reflection. So this was not a random take picture. This is, I love beauty and I seek it and I create it. And there's such a powerful leveling of society and a way to connect with nature if you can just take in beauty and appreciate it. For me, gratitude is very closely tied to my faith. By far, way more important than any education or even just people in my life is my faith. And I guess what I will say about that is I really don't have time to be walking in the wrong direction. So I'd rather God tell me before I run too far the wrong way. On those very lonely mornings when my life was falling apart, I didn't want to be alone. And so it was great to have a God that I could talk to from 5 to 7 a.m. before my children woke up, and then I could be happy and cheerful with him. And I believe the story of the 5,000 loaves, and I'm in sales. And who wants to make 5,000 calls if I can just make 5 and he can multiply it for me? So for me, my faith is the best way to live out a life of gratitude, and it's really the most empowering thing. Showing gratitude. Of course, it's saying thank you, and I hope everyone recognizes what that is, but it's actually a handwritten card, and I'm a big fan of them. One of the things, I'll tell you a story. I was invited to a party. It happened to be a Halloween party, and it was my daughter's classmates and friends. And so, you know, the kids are running around the neighborhood, and the parents were inside. And I was talking with one of the moms, and she came up to me. She said, "So tell me, who are your kids?" And I said, "Well, I'm here with Savannah, but Robert Ray and William Ray are my sons." And out of the blue, some man comes running over. It happened to be your husband. And she goes, Robert Ray is your son? And he's doing that thing with his phone, like scrolling through pictures. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to kill the kid. What did he do? You know, what kind of trouble did he get into? And the guy shows me a picture, and he said, "This was a thank you note I got from your son. I carry it on my phone, and I've shared it with my entire staff." So, of course, Robert can now do no wrong. But he had gone to a sports camp, and this gentleman led it over the summer, and he told me about the day he was running to the mailbox, always hoping to get a check to run the nonprofit that runs his sports camp, and he got this letter, and it's changed him, and it's something he carries around. And that was, of course, really powerful. I would love to tell you that all I ever do is try to make someone else's day, and so we write thank you notes so we can make someone else's day. But I'm way more selfish than that. I do buy thank you cards by the boxes of 300, and they sit in our house, and it is our goal, we've gotten slack, is that every one of us writes at least one thank you note a day. And the reason I do that is because we're just nicer. I found that when I had pretty demanding job and I had an hour commute, and I got home and I came in the door with, what's for dinner? Are we going to soccer? You forgot to buy those shoes. It was like boom, boom, boom. It was more than I could handle. But had I said, I'm on my way home, here's what you can prepare or what I need you to have done, and I better have thank you notes sitting out by the time I get there, there was just a moment spent in gratitude. And the way I was approached at the door was so much more welcoming and so much more relaxed. And so I really got in a bad habit where sometimes I forgot to mail them off to the other person because we'd gotten so much benefit over the fact that we'd changed our whole countenance because we had spent some time in gratitude. And it is such a powerful thing. Talking about gratitude, I'd like to talk to you about margin. So margin is, of course, just creating that space in your life where you have the chance to be free and to be creative. When we're talking about what are you making, if you're always living to someone else's demands and someone else's expectations, or the sense that the culture is driving you to do a certain thing, there isn't any room for creativity. And I don't think it just happens. I think we have to create it. Of course, figuring out where the, what do you call the thing, airplane mode is on this thing, turning it off every now and again and walking away is probably the best place that you can create some margin. You've had 482 people talk to you about that, so I'm not going to. One of the things I will talk to you about is service, is when we can start thinking of helping out someone else and serving. What immediately happens is we're usually overwhelmed with gratitude for what we have. We know our value because if I didn't go with my 12-year-old to the food bank, all of those cans would still be sitting there. It was our job to move the vegetables in this box and to move the fruits over into that box. It was our job to look at the back and to put the low sodium in this one and the higher sodium in this count, and to do the same with the sugar count. And that's how tens of thousands of families are fed every single week. And what was so powerful is I was actually struggling with this son. He was, let's just say, a little too free with his language. And I'll pick on him a little bit and give you a couple scenes. He's funny, so I appreciate that. But as Simon mentioned, I went to Harvard Business School. This is a hilarious thing for my children because I'm dumber than a box of rocks. And it's very frustrating to them because they're trying to achieve all sorts of great things academically. And they, Mom, are you sure? Is there a place in a remote South Carolina town that's called Harvard that maybe you went there? Anyway, so we were in North Carolina and I was driving for this basketball tournament. And I went over, I wasn't sure, and I was following these moms, and I didn't know where we were going, and so I kind of, ran over a curb, and without a, miss, he turns around and he goes, Harvard my ass. Yes, exactly. So he's funny, and his timing is good, but we had to laugh a little bit, and then I had to say, honey, that's maybe not so appropriate. So around the same time, and I'm just going to keep going with this because you're in college and I'm allowed to tell you dirty jokes, but he was in the classroom and the teacher was drawing something and it was like a geometry class, and the teacher said something like, can we make this bigger? And his response, as he pipes out louder than he realized, was, that's what she said. This was my troubled preteen, and I started to realize that we had to rein him in and we had to start to set some boundaries, and maybe he wasn't thinking. And there's so many things that I was advised in boundary setting and rules and turning off phones and so on. The thing that made the biggest difference was service. And it just changed everything about him, was literally spending some time sorting this vegetable from that fruit, caring about other people, showing that he was valuable to someone else and someone else needed him. He didn't have to do that show-off thing. He didn't have to wreck someone's geometry lesson to get attention. And all of a sudden it changed his perception. And I'm an absolute believer it's the best antidote to suicide and depression is serving. Your parents, you can write me a thank you. Your parents can write me a thank you note because I want to talk to you about the speed limit. And it was so funny to me because I've been gunning it my whole life and I never once thought about driving anything less than 9 miles an hour over the speed limit until 10, 15 years ago. And what was so amazing was I started realizing so many of my friends were doing the same thing. And what we realized was if we're always gunning it, if we're always timing our lives to just barely make it in, we're putting so much more pressure on ourselves. We're weighing ourselves down. We're never having those moments of getting there a little early. And there's absolutely no margin. So as silly as this hack or advice is drive the speed limit. Maybe on that odd day that someone cuts you off, or maybe something happens and you catch the light, or someone was, blocking the parking garage when you were getting out, so you ran a little late, so now you go 2 or 3 or 5 miles over the speed limit. I'm not saying like lock yourself in. I'm just saying get in that habit. It's one of those things that has really changed the way I approach so many of my days. I'm usually much earlier. And then guess what else happens is then you just take things in. Then you just have time to see all those other things we talked about, like beauty. So I'm a big fan of driving the speed limit, and it's a great place to start with margin. So as much as I'm saying don't overdo your life, I actually want to offer you a few hacks that have to do with margin. And these are technology hacks, because if I didn't do that, I didn't talk about technology, Dirk would send me home. So one of my favorite things is a timed email. And it might sound silly, but all of you are either professional or about to be more professional as you get summer jobs and careers. And I'm a big fan of it at any time, actually, is I do sometimes wake up in the middle of the night, and I do sometimes have, those are some of the best thoughts. And I might send an email, but I never want you to know it. As I use the timed email system, this is mine, right inbox. There are many. And what I love to do is have my day done before I arrive. So if I arrive in the office at 8:30, very often I've already have 15 to 20 timed emails just ready to go. Sometimes it was I was up late doing it. Sometimes it was the day before, but I didn't need to have it sent out until Tuesday. Sometimes I'm enjoying a movie or something with my kids, and I'm just cutting and pasting an email that says, hey, you're one of the 30 people I need to contact about this thing, and I'll just set them up. But the last thing I want to do is send it out at 2 o'clock in the morning. I want to arrive in the office at 8:30 and not feel like I got to hurry up and get to my desk. I got to hurry up and produce something. I want to know, you know what? If you want to interrupt me, you're an employee, you have a question or you have a problem, I don't have any problem giving you my full attention, because I've already done my whole day. It's already ready, and I'm already taking care of that. Similarly, one of the things that this system allows you to do is just hit 1 hour or 2 hours. And so I often might get an email from you that's a request or a challenge, or can you reply to this? And I will address it right at that moment, because I'm thinking about it, I'm excited, I've read what you had to say. 1 in 600 has to be sent at that next moment. Almost always I can get it out of my mind to do it and then hit the 2-hour button. And what's so great about that is now I can go reply to the other 10 or 15, and you're not replying to the reply. And so I am a huge fan of the hack of just decreasing your stress, building in margin by taking advantage of some technology, one of which is this margin. Another technology hack is the calendar. And I hope many of you already do this. But I use Calendly. Again, there's many that are available. But there's a lot of studies that show the more control you give other people in their day or their job, the happier they are. So this has two purposes. One is because I hate those conversations. Are you available on Tuesday at 1 or at 4? No, I'm on Wednesday. Like, that is such a time sink as just figuring out those schedules. Here's my calendar, grab a time that works for you. So now I've removed myself from all of those wasted conversations. And guess what? The person who I'm meeting with is happy because they were in control and they chose all of the time that worked for them. And it is a better arrangement. Everything gets right into your calendar. What phone number to call or where to meet is all automatically. And this system actually, if it's a consulting client, will send you right over to PayPal, and you can even pay before you schedule the meeting. So if there are things that you can do like that, that they absolutely allow you to have the meaningful conversation so that you're not lost in those administrative time sink kind of conversations. So none of you need to worry about this. I'm going to pick on Simon again, but since I'm the old evil one, I I know you did it, but it's just funny. Is metabolism slows down when you get older is all I'm saying. And so we have to take advantage of our opportunity. But this is actually me with a, what do you call it? Sitting is the new smoking. And so I have a stepper under one desk and I have this bicycle, and it just helps me feel like I'm moving around even if I'm really stuck at a desk. And I had to take on the arm weights because I work with people that are authors oftentimes. And I started working with this amazing woman. She's 70 years old and launching a business. I mean, God love her, right? And she's already written one book, and it's about communications in the workplace. And now she speaks and she writes and she consults with corporations on communications in the workplace. But she has the URL and is about to publish another book, and she's talking about women that are older, have experience, but somehow women get discredited. Sometimes when we have the gray hair, oftentimes men get more credit for having the gray hair. And I don't want to get into too much of a debate here. I'm just, follow me with you, Will. And so this was something that frustrated. So she has a whole business book about women having the right to be at the table even if they're older. But the title of her book is called The Right to Bare, B-A-R-E, Arms. And I just love that. And it motivated me to try to earn the right to bare arms. And so I keep a dumbbell on the desk just so I can earn that right in her conversation. So we've talked about gratitude, we've talked about margins. As you go through and are writing your ticket and you are living a life by design, not on demand, relationships are going to be key, and they are key. And I hope you already have lifelong friends that you will continue to grow together. I take this picture of an older couple, happens to be my parents, because it's really important to me to encourage you to have relationships with people that don't look like you, that don't come from the same place that you come from, that aren't the same age, that aren't going through the same things. That kind of perspective is so life-giving. It's so rewarding. It ignites such creativity that it's harder sometimes if you're not colliding with people, but seeking them out in social scenarios as mentors, and seeking younger people out for perspective will take you so far in life and help you to bring new ideas and new kinds of conversations. So because I'm talking about an older relationship, I want to share with you that I was privileged to play tennis for my college. I was actually my college captain. I went to Emory University, and that was a lot of fun. And the reason I was able to play at that level was because an 83-year-old man taught me to play tennis. And Dr. Hodgman showed up on court number 8 every single afternoon at 2 p.m. in Hilton Head Island, and he was a feminist. And he had decided that the way he wanted to empower young girls was through tennis. Now, this was a physician, and he had birthed, I don't know how many hundreds of babies, but what he saw was he wanted to help women. So he showed up there every day, and whenever we got there, he was always sitting on a bench. He was always reading a book. It was never in English. He read in German, he read in French, he read in Spanish. He encouraged us to do that same thing. We played tennis, we played hard. He yelled at me for being too slow or to being too sloppy or not. He called me Pinocchio if I didn't bend my knees. And then he took us to dinner. And he wanted us to know how to be treated as a lady. And so he would pick us up, he would hold the door open, he would take us out to a nice steak dinner, and it was myself and 5 or 6 other girls. We were 12, 13, 14 years old. And I've been all over the country. I've been to Rochester, New York. I've been to Michigan, and people randomly, because of some network, they come running up. Yeah, I hear you're a Hodgman girl. And so this was just something he did for about 20 years, found different teenage girls to help in this way. And we would be sitting at the dinner table, and he wanted women to have opinions. And he would say, what do you think of abortion? What do you think of capital punishment? Why do you think that way? And that was the dinner conversation. And so I don't know who you're mentoring, and I don't know who you're with, but someone needs you to have those kinds of conversations with them. And I hope you seek those from other people, and you start to build that dialogue in a really powerful way. And if Dr. Hodgman can be any inspiration in doing that, that would make me very happy. the actual relationship you have and the people you take with you through life are going to matter as well. And so I thought it was worth sharing this picture because my parents are still very happily married. They make incredible decisions together, and building a life with a partner is probably going to be the most important decision of your life, and trying to figure out how to feed into that is going to have huge impacts as you go forward. I also like to tell you this because this is a Georgia Tech game, and it might give you a sense that they're very loyal supporters of Georgia Tech, and it might explain to you that my name is B, and it's largely B because my parents thought that yellow jacket was not appropriate. So the last thing I want to talk to you about is what I call moment magic. It's taking advantage of the actual moment. And I think I learned this in my 20s. I took a cooking class, and it was something we kind of went to one Tuesday night, and we watched Judith Etz Hokins make this gorgeous meal, but we didn't cook it. And my friend Holly and I on Sunday mornings would go to the grocery store, fill out the list, and then that evening we would have a dinner party. And I actually had a steady Eddie who I married, and she had a new boyfriend every single Sunday. So that was really fun. We were cooking and hosting and just learning. But what I learned was what actually matters at the moment that people come to dinner is not, is it grilled properly or did you slice the bread properly? It's just be present. Just have fun. If something wasn't done to that point, we forget that dish, or we're going to have a sliced banana for dessert because we forgot the chocolate pie, whatever it was. And then what I learned is to just recognize that when we put too much pressure on moments, we ruin them. So I share this picture with you because this was myself at the U2 concert this summer, and it was a really awesome experience, but it epitomizes how my goal in big moments is to enjoy them so much before they happen that I don't actually care if they happen. I had so much fun revisiting the lyrics, hanging out with friends, playing this music. I went with my boyfriend, and he's got a boat, and we were blaring the YouTube music all summer on his boat, and we were just having a great time that literally, we arranged going to New York. We were having so much fun that literally, if the day of the concert I had looked at my tickets and said, oh my God, they were for last night, we blew it, I wouldn't have cared because we had so much fun. Well, what happens is when you can have that attitude about something, you realize you have that much more joy in the moment because all the pressure is off. And I share this with you especially because my heart has been broken dozens of times. Usually it's parents demanding something. It could be from a spouse, from each other, but often from their kids. This is your graduation and you must look right, or you must do this, and there's all these musts and there's all these shoulds and there's all these expectations that just erode the special time together. And I am a real fan of what I call joy prior equals joy plus, is that you will really have so much more joy if you can just think about the joy leading up to something and all of the benefits you're getting just looking forward to it. Now, I'm not saying that if you want to throw me a surprise birthday party that I'll be upset, because I don't mind a surprise. But if you want to throw me a planned birthday party, I'll probably have more fun because I'll have so much fun looking forward to it. So the other thing is, in moment magic, is just taking in the now. And I just had the picture because that dog wants to be nowhere else but where he is. Like, he's relaxed, he happens to be on a boat. And that is what I actually pray for you, is that wherever you are in that moment is exactly where you want to be. And this crystallized for me one time. I was playing tennis with my nephew. And it took years. I was always trying to get my kids and my nieces and nephews interested in tennis. And he said, hey, Aunt B, can we go play tennis? And what I guess I want to share with you is, I'm not saying he's the only person I ever want to spend time with. I'm not saying I want to spend every day, all day playing tennis. But if I'm lucky enough to play tennis with him for that hour, I don't want to be thinking about the fact that I'm not dancing with my daughter, or I'm not throwing a football with my son, or I'm not partying. I just want to be in that moment. And if you can entertain that invitation, I know great things happen from that opportunity. It's just saying, at this moment, this is exactly where I want to be. And we live in such a distracted world that it's really hard to do. It's something you absolutely have to train your mind to do. So I don't know if you can even see it, but in the edge of this little corner is actually a ticket. It's been the background of my slides. I think you're probably pretty proud that I knew how to do that transparency thing. But I want to tell you two stories in closing. And the tickets that are at the background are actually tickets that I had for my daughter's 18th birthday. I love theater. Another hack is that I've been to every single great musical production that's come through Hilton Head Island for the last, must be 16 years. My son is 15 years old, and I started when I was pregnant with him because I usher. Because the pressure of going to the $150 a night event, I only would choose one. And I thought, no, I want to go to all of them. And so I just usher for him. And so I've seen dozens and dozens of really great productions, but my absolute favorite is Les Miserables. And I did actually purchase tickets to Les Miserables when it came to Charleston a few weeks ago for my daughter's 18th birthday. And it was a pretty great experience. And I don't know why I wasn't figuring it out on the internet, but when I went to buy the tickets, I was a little fast, and I did think, gosh, those tickets were kind of expensive, but it's her 18th birthday, this will be great. Well, they were expensive because we were in the front row, and it was awesome. And so I was literally looking down on the orchestra, but my favorite song in my favorite musical is I Dreamed a Dream. And Eponine came around the stage and literally stopped at me. And I mean, when I see this play, it's almost like I ran a marathon. I'm like shaking and crying, and it's very embarrassing to me. But my daughter was like, it's great, because then the performers thought that they were like meaningful, which they were. But anyway, so she came straight around to me, and it was like she sang it only to me. And I think that that's so awesome that I was using these tickets here, that I'm talking to you about a dream life, and she was singing to me, I Dreamed a Dream. So just soak that in, and I wanted to share that with you. But in closing, I want to tell you, I hope you don't mind, what they say is don't ever read your notes. So I'm going to do what you're not supposed to do, and that way if you ever misbehave, if you're public speaking, you can say, well, remember that woman she read. But I want to read to you something that I wrote. And the reason is I wrote it about my daughter because for a brief moment in time, she was living a life by demand, not a life by design. So, do you miss your daughter? This is not an inquiry, but rather a rhetorical question from anyone I pass that knows that my 17-year-old daughter is traveling this summer to Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand. Should I admit that I not only do not miss her, I actually feel like I found her. I have read that high school junior year is a tough one, full of stress. As a transfer student in a highly ranked magnet school, this reputation of stress-filled played out. For the first time in her life, she seemed to walk to the beat of someone else's drum. And by the way, that drum was not so musically inclined. In one school year, my daughter managed to take up a new sport and play at the varsity level, make tons of great new friends, hold down a paying job, hold down a volunteer job, babysit, carpool her brothers, help her single mom, take all advanced and AP classes, scoring no less than a B, visit 15 colleges across 7 states, yet it always seemed like nothing was ever enough. Nothing was ever enough. As soon as one text was complete, it seemed like the list of must-dos just grew longer and longer. And then suddenly in an instant, only hours after her last exam, there I found myself. I was waving goodbye at 6 a.m. as she departed on 24 hours of air travel to the other side of our planet. Mine is the daughter who embraces sunrise and chases sunsets. She doesn't just consume what is in front of her or even take a picture. Rather, she is the girl who studies tide charts, researches the sun's patterns, learns animal behavior. This way, she can grab a shot of the kangaroo at dawn and reflective tide pools at dusk. So the fact that she planned and saved for this trip for 6 months doesn't surprise me. Do I miss her? I should answer yes, since this is the expected answer. But it might be more true that I anti-miss her. She is back. She is no longer buried in a narrative of unnecessary expectations. Rather, through FaceTime and texted photos, I see her smile eat scaly fish, learn a new version of hacky sack under city street lights with Vietnamese friends, and overflow with gratitude. She is climbing in the tunnels that determine the fate of the Vietnam War, and she is exploring the lost city of Angkor Wat in a Cambodian jungle. In her true fashion, she is filling me and her brothers with bright images, new relationships, and expanded intellect. Thinking about my amazing daughter makes me ponder about business leadership. How often do we set a conveyor-like expectation, policies and procedures, and unintentionally eradicate creativity and genius by doing so? Well, let's make a commitment to not. I look forward to her return and the hug that we will share. Meanwhile, I am delighted that she was able to, for now at least, shed the compulsive culture for the creative cultural experience. I thank God that she has such an amazing, adventurous, brilliant child that walks our planet, and I am in awe that I get to know and love her. I wanted to share that with you today because the exact way I feel about her is what I want for you, is that if you can shed those cultural expectations and follow what is in your heart to design a life that is exactly what you want, if you can go write that ticket, you'll make me very happy. Thank you.
We've got time for questions, but there's no battery in the microphone, so be sure you speak up. Oh, there's a battery. I'll walk around and hand you the mic if you need.
So the one thing I was supposed to do was start my timer, and I didn't, but it's 7:30, and I think by that I might take a bow because I'm pretty proud. All right, someone's gonna give me a question. Dirk.
Does that suggest that everybody should sort of, while they're in college, think outside the box in their studies as well, and maybe explore in their studies as well?
If you don't kick me out, yes. So I don't know exactly how Carolina works, and I'm not saying don't get your major, but sure, my favorite class was one that was not in my major necessarily. It's one that has enriched my life and things that I've done. And I think it's the whole purpose of college is to do my purpose for college is not to go get a job. But I think it is about learning something new, engaging with new people, thinking about collaborating in new ways. So yes, I absolutely personally believe thinking outside the box is the way to go.
Things like innovation and entrepreneurship would be great.
Things like innovation and entrepreneurship would be perfect. Hey.
How can we focus on setting goals for ourselves while also eliminating the pressure you were talking about and living in the moment?
Well, that's a great question. And I think there's a big difference between your goals and understanding what are my personal goals, and understanding the why is a great way to magnify energy and opportunity and relationships that will feed into that. Shedding someone else's goals, someone else's expectation. And I don't know that that's not friends, boyfriends, parents, or communities. I'll give you one quick example is today, raising kids, there is an expectation that 3-year-olds are in organized sports. So there is an expectation that we organize our lives around being available Saturday morning. It is literally why I had to go live on a bridgeless island. I didn't know how to say no to that. And so that's just one example. I hope you don't hear me picking on your parents. They're not the only people that set expectations, but there are so many expectations coming at you. Learning how to put a lens and realize what that is the best way to free yourself from those so that you can indeed do the things that you want to do. It's a great question. No, thank you very much.
I've got one.
Oh, please.
What advice could you give to somebody who's in college, say where they are now, and might not know exactly what their big passion is?
I would say, come with me. I'm 50 and I'm looking for mine too. So that's great. So I am not one to put all that pressure on knowing what it is today. But the piece of advice I would give is then kill everything you do. Do it well. So the better, the more, you know, if you say to yourself, well, I don't really know my passion, so it's okay that I get a C here and I don't do very well there and I don't get involved because I don't really know what I want, that's not what I would advise. I would advise going in and kicking butt in whatever you're actually doing, because that is the thing that's going to open up opportunity for you. So if you are going to bother to take the entrepreneurship class, go at it, get an A in it. Oh, and by the way, meet some entrepreneurs. Go, whether it's part of the class or not, study them, get connected to them, and you will then maybe realize, oh, I hate that. I want to go work for a big corporate America or Boeing or whatever. But at least you didn't lukewarm fade through life. So I am not one to put pressure on the fact that like you've got to have your passion, and once you finally figure that out, then you dive in. The better you do at things in life, the less you need to know exactly where that's leading, because it's going to continue to open up more and more opportunities. Hey.
Hi. Okay, so my passion kind of involves with what your daughter is doing now, traveling, but just a general question, did she go through a certain organization to do that? And how did she go about planning that?
Thank you. So she is just a high school student. So there was a school-sponsored EF Tours trip, and so they did a lot of the planning. Her job was to go make money and be able to pay for it. So she served acai bowls, is very specifically the job she had. But she did, one of the requirements I had was a little bit of that prior joy equals more joy. I wanted you to really get a joyful experience, and the way we're going to do that is you're going to teach us along the way, myself and the other children in our house. And so we had maps of Southeast Asia up. We watched some movies together because we didn't want her to just blink through that great experience, and we wanted to be able to follow her and understand what she was doing. And so in that sense, that was just my requirement. Yes.
I got an observation. B and I just met through the internet 3 or 4 weeks ago. We have a common interest in some things business-wise. And I think a lot of times when you go to a program and you hear somebody speak, don't you ask yourself, I wonder if she really does that? Have you ever thought about that? You know, they're down there talking about do this, do that, do that. I wonder if she really does that. Well, in our second correspondence, she sent me an email. She says, I'd like to talk to you, and sent me that phone link. Pick your time you want to talk to me. And I have never seen that. In all the years I've been in business, I have never seen that. Just what she's talking about. It's a neat thing. And the second thing, after we had that conversation, I got a written thank you note from her. And I can tell you that how often do you get written thank you notes from people for doing stuff? A lot of it's email, right? That's easy. Just sit down, bang out an email. Thank you for the dinner. Thank you for inviting me, whatever. But when people sit down and write out a handwritten thank you note, it means a tremendous amount. So try that. You'll like it. And it'll mean something to the people that get it.
Thank you, Charlie. I'll give you another piece of advice. Put a ringer in the audience who might say, no, I didn't do that. But I'm so happy you're here for a lot of reasons. I was worried that Sharon and I have had some business correspondence before, and she has asked me questions, and I have probably hit the 1 hour button on you as a way of saying, now I got to go answer this before you answer me back. And that is not a lack of love, but it is a let me be totally focused on this, because what I find is if I do the immediate reply, then when the reply comes back, I don't give it all of my attention. But if I was able to clear the box. So thanks for smiling with me on that one. Hey.
Hi. I found your parenting style like really unique, and I was wondering, did your parents shape that, or is that
Oh, that's a
something you
great
kinda-
question. What was unique about it?
Just like-
Hiding out on a bridge of
You're-
siding, or?
You're very free-spirited, like in your parenting style.
Okay.
And I think that's, I mean,
I don't think anyone else's parents raised us on an island.
Yeah.
So that's really cool in itself, and that you were able to like turn away from all of that and raise them how you wanted them to progress. I think it's cool.
Thank you. No, it's nothing like how I was raised. So isn't that interesting? My parents grew up in Savannah, Georgia, and Savannah, Georgia is one of these towns that we call a BYOJ town, bring your own job, and they had to literally escape. My mom married rich because she married the barber's son, so there was no like job to come back to. They had to go somewhere else, and what that led to was a life in suburbs, because we moved around so much that you have to always be ready to move to the next town. So we were never sort of in like an old community with just all that comes with that. We were surrounded by a bunch of transients. Anyway, the long story is to say that they were very strict. They were very loving and helpful, but they were, as they got out of Savannah, there was a set rule of following a job. Everything was about the job. I remember my dad worked nights, and it was like, shh, shh, dad's asleep. Like it was almost like we worshipped the job. And my dad had the same job for 33 years. It was terrifying for him to take a risk and go outside. So maybe my willingness to take a risk is in reaction to that, because I see what he gave up. He was a very, very brilliant man and I would go to Ford plants 5 or 6 years after he had left, and people would run up to me and they would miss him. And I thought, why did he always feel so stuck in a job? Like people loved what he did. And so if anything, you're asking me about parenting style, and I'm sort of answering about professional style, but it trickles, is different, but it comes from, I did have very, very loving parents, and what's funny about them is they really like me. They don't just like my kids. And so that is a blessing, is that they've always been really supportive and been willing to go the extra mile. So I don't know if that helps. I could be a little more demanding with my kids. Anything else?
This feels like a perfect place to close.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Well, thanks everybody. I really enjoyed it.